Sanibona, ngaphambi singene kwivideo namuhla, ngithi angithathe lethuba ngibonge isupport nothando nesikhombise lona lingaphezulu kokucabanga kwethu. Siyacela niqhubeke nisupporte njalo ngokubuka amavideo ethu, ungakhohlwa ukukhomenta, ushare, ulike. Siyafisa ukuzwa umbono wakho. Sicela ke singene kwivideo namuhla. Kulamaviki adlule sike sakhuluma udaba lana nguChief we-South African National Defence Force okuGeneral Rudzani Maphwanya emveni kokuba kunento ekwabi kuthiwa zisho mayise Iran. Kule video manje ngifisa ke sibheke sikhulume ngalolu daba. Siyazi ukuthi uGeneral uhlangane noPresident Cyril Ramaphosa baxoxa kanti ngosuku vele abuya ngalo wahlangana nominister futhi uminister wakubeka kwacaca ukuthi yena akayiboni into ekuthiwa iyiphutha kule nkulumo esho General Rudzani Maphwanya.
The Democratic Alliance is demanding the immediate court-martial of South African National Defense Force, following what it calls reckless political freelancing during a recent trip to Iran. The general made headlines after Iranian state media reported he pledged common goals with Tehran. The DA says these comments break the SANDF's strict code of political neutrality. The DA defense spokesperson says the actions violate the Military Discipline Supplementary Measures Act and could be punishable by dismissal.
Ngaphambi sidlulele ku former president uThabo Mbeki, kufanele ngikukhumbuze ukuthi kwathiwani njengoba usizwe lokuqala ukuthi iDA ithini yona. Siyazi ukuthi noma sebekhulumile bonke kodwa ekugcineni kwesuku umuntu okuyena ofuneka athathe isinyathelo nonamandla ukuthatha inyathelo against uGeneral uPresident Cyril Ramaphosa. Uhlangene uPresident Ramaphosa noGeneral abazange basibikela ukuthi kuthiweni kodwa siyazi ukuthi bona bahlangene baxoxa. Asidlule phambili sonke zozibi naye wakhuluma kanje.
Let me talk about the general. The general was out of line. If my name was Cyril Ramaphosa and I was a president, I would tell him he's retiring on the 31st of December and somebody is taking over on the 1st of January and name that person. Here is why. There is a culture in South Africa, and I will talk about the corruption and the mismanagement in the armed forces because we have to lay the facts bare on the table because people don't pay attention, South Africans general, when we discuss these things in parliament, right? Generals or army officers are not supposed to make political statements at all. What the general said in Iran can be said by Angie Motshekga, not him. That Angie is spineless and does not want to deal with the issue. Does not mean she is correct. She herself is wrong. And if I was a president, I would also dismiss her as defense minister due to unsuitability and having zero strategic awareness, like the general, who has zero strategic awareness, who has zero diplomatic maturity, who thinks he is a politician when he is not. There was nothing urgent that required the general to go to Iran. Why is that interaction important? We have $3.2 billion of trade with the United States annually. With Iran, I think it's about $160 million. It's peanuts. Pakistan and Ronald Lamola are busy trying to save South African jobs. The US and Iran are enemies. What does this general do? He goes there, he runs his mouth because he has no strategic awareness whatsoever, undermining the work that Pakistan and Ronald Lamola are doing. Why would he do that? There is a feeling by South Africans that he's a general, he should be able to say anything. Nonsense. That's ill discipline. He must be fired. And it's not the first time the defense forces have gone rogue. There was a head of the Navy who blamed Treasury for the state of the army. I can give you chapter and verse about how those people have run the army to the ground. Those people who buy obsolete equipment, who are fixing an old ship so that it can sail to Cuba for diplomatic relations. Diplomacy is not their job. Why are they fixing the SAS Drakensberg to go to Cuba? To do what? Why are we training doctors in Cuba? Why do we have technicians from Cuba when we've got top-notch engineering training here in South Africa? These are the people that are taking those stupid decisions in the army, and we must mollycoddle them when they waste taxpayers' money and they go and say stupid things overseas. I would retire that guy. He's out of line. He's ill-disciplined. He's incapable of running the defense forces. They've got the worst audit outcome record of any government department for years by a long stretch. And they refuse to accept civilian oversight. And they use the term civilian in derogatory tones within the defense force. I know it. I get full briefings from the Auditor General, confidential briefings too. The army is a mess and those people have destroyed it. And this guy is going to make political statements overseas. It is a factor of how much the president has allowed people to act with impunity under his watch that we have a situation like this. That's the problem. He should fire that guy and hire someone else. And that person should not be somebody who was with MK who thinks he's a politician when he's supposed to be a professional soldier. These people don't know how to run a professional army. And that's a fact. If you took the trouble to talk to mid-rank officers who joined the army after 1994, they eventually leave because those people promote each other and they're useless. So now we must call a spade a spade. We must call a spade a spade. The country has gone to the dogs because we don't call a spade like this.
Njengoba umuzwa ke uSongezo Zibi naye beka ngendlela acabanga ngayo nangendlela afila ngayo emveni kokuba sekukhulunywe zonke lezi zinto esikhulunywe ngoGeneral Rudzani Maphwanya. Ngenza ke le video ngoba kwi-video engiyibukile uformer president ubaba uZizi uchaza izinto la ezibalulekile engicabanga ukuthi kufanele sikhulume ngazo, and ukube mhlawumbe izinto lezi bebezi understand ngendlela azoyichaza ngayo upresident uThabo Mbeki, mhlawumbe ngabe nestatement lesekade usibuka eshiwo uSongezo Zibi besihlukile kunalesi asenzile. Ngikusho lokho ngoba into yokuqala yenzayo ukulanda umlando khona phakathi kwe-South Africa kanye ne-Iran. Ukuthi lamazwe amabili ubudlelwane bawo bumi kanjani. Emveni kwalapho bese Paul ukuthi ngabe likhona iphutha noma likho iphutha na ngalokho okuthiwa kwashiwo Chief General Rudzani Maphwanya, Chief we South African National Defence Force. Ngicela ukucophenela ke nango baba uZizi uze ukuthi uthini.
Our relationship, I'm now talking as a liberation movement. Our relationship with Iran starts after the overthrow of the Shah of Iran. The government of Iran at the time of the Shah had very good relations with the apartheid regime. When it was overthrown, that's when we started our own relations with Iran, which have continued ever since. At the time that the issue of the nuclear question as it relates to Iran, at that time that it arose very sharp and became a big issue, Security Council and all that, for some of that time, South Africa was the chair of the non-aligned movement. So we dealt with the government of Iran as the chair of the non-aligned movement. Because the positions that the non-aligned movement were taking was this, that the non-aligned movement is a very active supporter of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. And therefore, the non-aligned movement would be opposed to any proliferation of nuclear weapons if it occurred in Iran. That's the position we took. And so we had very active engagement with the government of Iran on this matter. And the government of Iran continues to insist with us that there was actual policy that Iran must not have nuclear weapons. And therefore, the accusation that was being made at the time, they consistently denied it, that there were no nuclear weapons in Iran. As I say, we worked with them very closely at the time. I remember that there was a leading Iranian who became president of Iran, Mr. Rouhani. At the time that he was leading the negotiations on this issue, he came to us. We had a number of meetings with him. I'm saying later he became the president of Iran. During that time, maybe this is the first time I'm saying this. During this time, we are chair of the non-aligned movement. I then talked to the British Prime Minister and said to him, "No, Prime Minister, we are regularly in contact with the Iranians on this matter, and they assured us that there are no nuclear weapons. Can you give me one or two facts which show that in fact there is work being done in Iran towards the manufacture of nuclear weapons?" Just a couple of facts, because then it would empower me as a chairperson of the non-aligned movement to confront the Iranians that you're not telling me the truth. So the British Prime Minister agreed. As a result, a delegation came from the British Intelligence Service, the MI6. They came here. So I met them. We raised the same issue with the government of Israel. And a delegation of Mossad came here, and we met them. We raised the same question with the US government, and the delegation of the CIA came, and they were met by the then Minister of Intelligence, Ronnie Castrins. And all of them, these intelligence agencies, they made their presentations. The reason our countries are saying Iran is busy with nuclear weapons are the following. In all instances, what our response was, what you are actually arguing is 1 + 1 is 5. There was nothing of substance that they had. It was deductions. If this and that, therefore the other. I'm saying that's why we say 1 + 1 = 5. I'm saying that was the actuality, and at that point of time, that it seemed to us that the government of Iran was quite being very truthful when they say there's no nuclear weapons. And indeed, these intelligence agencies, where they came to see us, could not give us information of an alternative kind. I do not know whether the situation in Iran with regard to nuclear weapons has changed. I'm saying during the time we're in government, historically, that was the position. I know the government of Iran continues to insist on that issue. Whether that's changed or not, I don't know. The issues of the involvement of MTN, for instance, in Iran, was entirely a matter between the company and Iran. The Iranians put out a tender for mobile telephony. MTN won that contract. I remember there was strong opposition. Another competitor there was a Turkish company. But that was entirely a commercial thing. So I don't see the reason why the matter of the relations between South Africa and Iran should offend anybody. These are ordinary, normal. These are ordinary, normal bilateral relations between South Africa and Iran. There's nothing exceptional about them. And indeed, I don't know what the chief of the National Defense Force said when he was in Tehran recently. I'm sure that would not have created new policy towards Iran. So as I say, I really am, I don't know what it is that would be offensive to anybody, as a consequence of which there would be a confrontation between us and any other country about the issue of our relations with Iran. There's nothing exceptional about those relations. The U.S. historically, as everybody, students at the school know, the U.S. has had what has been called the Monroe Doctrine for centuries, which was that part of the world is the exclusive sphere of influence by the United States, Latin America and so on. And I'm afraid, I think that attitude persists. And so when Cuban Revolution succeeded in 1959, Fidel Castro would say, when we took power in 1959, we were pink in our politics. We were pink, like the shirt I'm wearing. I think it's pink. And he says, what turned us red was the response of the United States towards Cuba. It was the attitude that the United States government took at that time, which was to say, in our sphere of influence in terms of the Monroe Doctrine, you cannot have policies of which the United States government disapproves. And therefore took certain actions against Cuba. I think you're having a similar phenomenon with regard to Venezuela. Because I wouldn't imagine that Venezuela is a threat to the United States. I think you can't imagine that Venezuela becoming a threat to the U.S. such that the U.S. must destroy troops to come and attack Venezuela. Doesn't make sense to me. But I think it's probably influenced by this continuing doctrine that this part of the world is our sphere of influence, and therefore we will not allow that any government should pursue policies with which we disagree. I would hope that it's a matter that can be resolved, because the countries of Latin America, like the countries of Africa, really surely should be free to decide what their destiny is, without anybody dictating to them that you are in my sphere of influence, therefore do the following. I do not know whether, I cannot answer the question whether the U.S. knew what Israel was going to do relative to this recent attack in Doha. I don't know that.
Zale video ngoba ngithe mangiyilalela lenkulumo ngaqonda ukuthi kanti vele iSouth Africa inabo ubudlelwano neIran, and ngisho ka former president akayiboni into wrong engase kuthiwa isho general, ngoba lokho akushilo vele iSouth Africa inabo ubudlelwano neIran. Kodwa inkinga iAmerica manje isifike yazibeka esigabeni sokuthi kufanele wena ikukhethele njengeSouth Africa isikhethele ukuthi cha uma ufuna siqhubeke nokwenza ibhizinisi nani nokusebenzisana nani njengoba sisebenzisana, kufanele nizwane nalamazwe ningazwani nalamazwe. Emveni kwenkulumo ezingaka seyikhulunyiwe nje badumuzwa nje songezo zibesho khona ukuthi no, kufanele axoshwe ugeneral. Kodwa uformer president usivezela umlando ukuthi ubudlelwano obukhona phakathi kwe-Iran abuqali manje ne-South Africa abuqali manje. So noma yini esho General usho ngoba vele kunobudlelwano phakathi kwalamazwe amabili. Ya ngicela ukuthi ukuphawula kwakho la ku comment section. Ngizwe wena ukuthi uthini kulokukhuluma esesikubekile. Ngaloko kubambelela nje asivale le video. Mina nawe bese sidibana kwi-video elandelayo. Ungakhohlwa ukusubscribe, share, ulike. Ngiyabonga.